here we go. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Adult Child of Dysfunction. Today, we have with us someone who I'm excited for you to meet. She's actually going to be doing an event together with us, and we've started collaborating and really kind of just have the same mindset as far as adult children and what we can do to help them. So, welcome, Connie Davis. She is the co-founder of Inspire.World Foundation and Chief Post-Traumatic Growth Officer. She empowers women to transform trauma into wisdom. She's a financial services veteran, an ICU survivor, a widow, and certified WIDP practitioner, which we will let her explain. And she helps adult children of dysfunction discover their unique value rhythm, and become lighthouses for others. I love that analogy, first of all. But hi, Connie, how are you?
Hi, I'm good, Tammy. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, you're very welcome. So we're going to jump right into it. But before we even jump into it, I want you to explain two acronyms to the listeners so they understand ICU and WIDP so they know what we're talking about.
Yeah, well, the ICU was my own internal intensive care unit for COVID. So I was in ICU after getting the COVID virus back in 2021, spent a lot of time really reflecting on how that happened to me, and how much fear it really left me with. And the dysfunction from some of my childhood wounds actually contributed to some of that. So looking backwards, I look at that COVID ICU experience as, that cognitive dissonance moment where you're like, there's something that you have to fix. There's things you have to fix on the inside in order to get past some of the lessons that keep repeating themselves in your life. So I always talk about that because that was the storm that kind of broke through for me, was a near death experience in the ICU.
And a lot of times it's a crisis situation that brings you to that, okay, something's got to give. This is not how I want to spend the rest of my life. I
Right.
know I had a stroke in January, and it was the same thing. It really makes you rethink and reevaluate and really dig deep to see if you're truly happy, just truly
Right.
happy. Or like you said, why did I get affected more than anybody? Why did I end up in the ICU? And a lot of it was probably physical and spiritual and energetic things that you had from childhood to begin with. So it was by default, you're a little weak in that immune system. So explain then too, and I didn't know ICU was so simple. That's what I,
It's
I
okay.
thought maybe it is something else.
It
Um,
welcomed conversation.
yeah, absolutely. And what is the WIDP for the listeners out there?
Yeah, so WIDP is a gift to humanity. And I say it that way because as we grow up from our parents, and environments, there is a gentleman that created a gift to humanity. His name is Dr. John Worley. I am honored to have studied with him, and it stands for Worley's Identity Profile. And he is a clinical psychologist that started seeing repeat patterns of patients in his office for therapy, at the psychologist's office, and wanted to help get them out of his office and back to thriving. So he created a tool. He's been doing the work for about 40 years. He's almost 80 years old, and
Wow.
has really started passing the torch to individuals like myself, certifying us on the tool so that we can use that tool to build emotional intelligence. And now, in the time of technology and so many mental health challenges, so much emotional ups and downs going on in life, especially around, dysfunction in families, adverse childhood experiences that grow into adult trauma. Those are things that I have figured out a non-clinical way to kind of use the tool to help them walk back to their authenticity. So WIDP is the tool that I use with clients that I work with, and we're trying to find ways to get it into the community at scale.
Nice. So it's a modality. It's
Yes,
basically a
it's
healing
a
modality.
it's a healing modality. It's an awareness journey. It kind of gets confused with a personality test. It's not a personality test. This is a temperament test. This is your emotional DNA.
Okay, perfect. So I'm just going to ask a few more questions about that because that's fascinating. So is it a questionnaire that you start with, and that kind of gives you a
Yeah.
general base assessment, and then you work from there?
Yes. So Dr. John has designed this to be a 15 to 20-minute exercise. It's 60 questions that ask you questions about socialization, leadership, how you make decisions, the number of people you like around you. And it really kind of measures different areas of whether you're introverted or extroverted and how you make decisions and how you build trust and how you feel safe. And then it gives you a profile that is custom and unique to you based on those 60 questions. And then as a certified WIDP practitioner, I get to work with clients to help them unpack what that emotional map is, learn what it's telling them, and how to really unleash all of that amazing talent that's inside of them.
Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. And I know the listeners, they're like, oh my gosh, Tammy, something else to read about, something else. We're constantly throwing these different modalities at people. And we're saying this one is the best and that one's the best. And they all work. You have to work them, but they all have their own strengths and they all work for you. It's just a matter of what resonates with you. A lot of people say I like, the internal family systems, and a lot of people just like the energy healing, like the Reiki. And yeah, there's so many different options for you. And that is why, if you're out there listening and you're like, God, please don't give me another one, that is why we do this. Because we want people to have choices and we want people to understand that there are so many different ways to overcome this. Ugh, I call it the childhood trauma that follows us into adulthood. And I mean, I think we were talking earlier, well, last time we talked, and some questions that you had asked for me to ask on the podcast were things about the hypervigilance and the perfectionism and the just all of that stuff. Is that the I guess issues that you work to resolve?
Yeah, I like to think of it this way, Tammy. If we could go rewind the time backwards and we could go to where we were born perfect, perfect little babies before we were immersed in our environments, right? Whatever those environments held for us as experiences. I like to think that WIDP walks you back to that perfect design that was created at birth, which is what Dr. John has created as a gauge that helps you understand your unique emotional expressions, how you express yourself, and what you need before all of those experiences disrupted your programming, right? And that's what's happening is we're having experiences with our parents and our meaning makers out there. And as children, we don't know the difference. We just know that
Hmm.
that's what our parents told us something should be like. And those become our belief systems. So, what WIDP does is it gives you a clean slate. It tells you how you were designed at birth uniquely out of the different types of temperament. And it allows you to wipe the slate clean and look in the mirror and go, I can celebrate all of these amazing strengths and the ways that I express myself in three different areas: social, leadership, and relationships, so that way I can go back and give myself permission to be that whole person.
So this is a crazy, well, it's not a crazy question. It's probably a question a lot of people have. So when you take these quote unquote, I don't want to say assessments, but assessments, and you're answering these questions, what if you're at that point? I mean, you're answering them from your belief system. How does this distinguish and know what has been taught to you? And so maybe for an example, you did say, how many people do you like being around? Um, Maybe because you're so used to only being around three because of your anxiety, you say a small group. But in reality, you really actually, if you were thriving and if you had all this, let go of all this baggage, you love being in a crowd, but you don't know that.
Mhm.
How does that discern that?
So I love that you asked the question, and Dr. John's proprietary score and questionnaire actually has a way of drawing that out. Remember, he's a clinical psychologist, so he knows
Hmm.
how to get deep into the wiring. And the way that the questionnaire is structured is it's really drilling into how deep is that need? How long is that particular, question? And it's usually meant for truth seekers. So if I'm being forced into taking a questionnaire, of course I'm going to show up with my personality. That's my
Right.
personal reality at that time. This measures that deeper need. So
Mm.
if I am really intentional about getting to a place of Dr. John's assessment gets us to there through those 60 questions. So some people have said it feels repetitive. We say we're getting to the deepest core need of your emotional wiring.
Yep. And it makes sense because anytime you take those questions, sometimes you go, oh, it sounds repetitive. But depending on how you answer it, each time it builds your profile. And that I
Yes.
do get, because you might answer it just a tiny bit differently if it's worded just a little bit differently. And that all kind of gets encompassed into that. Well, I love that. That's fascinating. So this is probably a great tool for those people that are just like, and this is a lot of my audience. So the comments that I get from people a lot of times are the people that are on the beginning of this healing journey, where they just know that they don't feel right, or they just realize that their dysfunction is that they've got these patterns. When was the moment, or what really made you realize that you had these patterns from childhood?
Um, well, I have a very unique story and it's full of loss and it's full of grief. And I have to say, there was definitely some things popping up as a young mom. I've had three kids, and I parented them each differently a little bit because I was at different junctions in my life and they saw some of the best of mom and some of the worst of mom, depending on where I was in my career path. I didn't stay at home and I worked, the entire time that they were growing up. Things were affecting me though in my relationship before my kids were born. So there was little breadcrumbs going on all the way through. And when my mom passed away, there was a lot, right, at that point, because I had to face like everything that she left behind that was unanswered questions. Then when my husband passed away, there was a whole nother wave, right, of you have to face some of these things that you're dealing with that probably disrupted the peace in your family, or things that you guys didn't ever make peace with. Those are chapters that I'll never get to close. So I was always in these layers of scooping out the gunk, right? I call it the
Mm-hmm.
scooping it out, trying to clear it out and go through this healing journey. And it's probably taken me 15 years now of,
Mm-hmm.
the last 15 years of my life. But it was probably that first little whisper, where you're just like, something's not okay, when I ended up in the psychologist's office because I couldn't say no without feeling anxious.
Yeah. I was going to say there's usually an aha moment for,
Hmm.
people listening, and or sometimes there's several aha moments.
Hmm.
Mine was when I was 26 years old and I was in getting ready to have my first child and realized I didn't know what unconditional love felt like. And that's what like pushed me into this, oh my God, what is quote unquote wrong with me? And there was nothing wrong with me. I just never experienced it. I had never learned it. So then as I'm, like, how do I love this little thing in my belly? I've never been
Yeah.
attached to anything before. Then I started down that journey of what else? What else? And it was like I was at such a stage in the very beginning of complete and total, I literally mental shutdown, that, things would come out of my mouth like, oh yeah, my mom pimped me out to drug dealers so casually that people like, and you never went to therapy for that? No, it was just a thing. And like, it was like I was so disconnected unbelievably. But that was my first aha. And so, wow. So what was your journey like? What did you start when you realized? Did you traditional therapy? I'm assuming you said when you ended up in a psychologist's office.
Yeah, I did, and I didn't get far. And I think it's because, as I've learned now at the end of that process, when WIDP came in, it was like it buttoned up everything. It gave me the permission to finally be real and look at the mirror. But before that, so if I reverse engineer the journey, WIDP was the last piece that fell into place. What came before that was I think it was about 6 months, I was working to become a certified love and authenticity practitioner. I thought I had a communication problem. I
Mm,
thought I wasn't communicating what was in my heart because I got so jumbled with my words. Turns out I was such an introvert, but I was an introvert that requires balance. I express myself up to a certain point, but my emotional needs are so much more than what I have the capacity to express, that I was constantly second guessing myself. I was overthinking. I was very melancholy, kind of always saw the negative at first. And I realized that that was actually part of my emotional wiring and less about my child trauma. So it gave me a chance
mm,
to embrace, okay, well, no wonder that certain things that your mom or your dad or your teachers or, corporate managers did created such emotional gaps inside of you. It's because you don't have the capacity to receive that, type of socialization, or do you need more leadership and people that, than people that express that leadership naturally? So I was able to kind of let my guard down in that journey of love and authenticity and doing some somatic work to WIDP. And it was like, now I can live in harmony because I'm authentic. My trauma
Right.
happened, but it's in the past.
Right.
And I'm the one that keeps bringing it into the present moment because I keep recycling those stories that are in my memory. As an introvert, I live inside my own world and I'm
Right.
in my own world and I don't, always express it, but I can sure traumatize myself. And that's what
Yeah.
they say little trauma is, right? So,
Yeah. I mean, I've heard many different definitions of little trauma. Like they talk about the little T trauma and big T trauma, and I have that discussion with people a lot who are like, "Well, it wasn't that bad. It was just a little trauma." There's no such thing as a little trauma,
right. No.
right? If it changes the way you look at the world, changes the way you see yourself or other people, it is trauma, period, you know?
Yeah.
So, but yes, no, it makes sense. And that's interesting. I'm fascinated actually about this WIDP because it's like, it's kind of now it's bringing up the question to me, like, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Because, like, you're saying you were born this introvert who had so much more, but at the same time, that's what trauma does to a lot of people too. It
Yeah.
makes them not be able to express themselves. So it's interesting that it can decipher. I think that's the biggest question in my mind as I'm picturing this program or whatever it is so, but I love that it can do that because that question is always there. It's like when people get it's like when you get this late stage diagnosis of ADHD. Well, do you have ADHD or is it trauma? Like, because trauma does so many crazy things to
Mm.
you. How do you know? And I love this actually. I'm really fascinated with it because it's like
Yeah.
when people are always saying, "Oh, you got to go back and you got to become a new you." No, you
Mm.
don't.
Yeah, we're
That's
not going to change our environment in here. We need to just learn how to manage what's in here. And what I love, if I could paint a picture for you, so Dr. John talks about a triangle. The triangle has different layers to the triangle. It's very similar to Maslow's hierarchy, right? We're all familiar with that. But at the bottom, at the base of the triangle is temperament. And temperament is how much of that emotion bubbles up from your nervous system into your brain and says you're not safe, or
right.
you don't feel competent, or you don't feel connected, or you don't feel loved. Those are basic responses for the emotional system. Above temperament becomes character. So we're taught to play these characters and wear these masks in society, in our families, in our churches, at our workplace. And we put those masks on and we don't always take them off all the way. We don't
Right.
ever step out of costume. So, what temperament allows you to do is separate from character and personalities, where you're like immersing yourself into a personal reality. That's a reality that you play out that character, you show up as that person. And then you have moods and behaviors that are separate from personality and character, which is separate
Mhm.
from temperament. But temperament is like your thermostat. So if
Right.
you have only so much capacity for socialization, me personally, I only take so much and then I got to go home. I'm worn out. I need to take a nap. So WIDP gave me the opportunity to say, that's why you get so tired out when you exert so much energy socializing that you just need to recharge and give yourself
Mhm.
permission to recharge.
Yep. It's very much like the whole concept of that too, of knowing your temperament is like your human design. So
Yes.
this is, it's like I'll say to my friend who's been doing human design for like 15 years, I don't understand why I always do this. Like, why do I do that? And she's like, because this is what you are. And she'll give me some numbers and letters and all this stuff and talk about her chart and everything. And I'm like, oh, well, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Now I know what I can do when that comes about. And it was like a quick fix, but
Yeah.
you got to be given the tools.
Yeah. So think of a tool. So you mentioned all these numbers and letters. It's 6 numbers and it's on my screen right here. So you can see my temperament is 30, 12, 25. So what we're doing is we're building a universal trust language, a safety
Mm,
language that when we come to understand these coordinates, and I talk about them as a emotional map, I'm giving you coordinates and then I teach you how to navigate them. And it's very simple. Dr. John created a very simple system and it allows us to create a universal language. And then you can numerically hold space once you and your significant other or your family all knows their temperament and their coordinates, and then you can navigate with one another much better.
yeah. And how long is this process traditionally?
So the questionnaire process is as long, probably 15, 20 minutes. And then I have really designed a harmonization journey where you go through an emotional awareness process to really bring back the radiance out of your spirit because now you're like, okay, I can set all that stuff aside. I can actually be and walk back to my authentic self and celebrate all of the strengths that this profile tells me that I was born with instead of trying to prove to the world that I have strengths and that I'm worth something. Some people really struggle with that.
Yeah.
But this is in your face, a written profile. So it's probably an hour with me, kind of going through that. I can do those in group sessions as well. And then it's walking with your temperament for 30, 60 days to really get a feel for when that stuff shows up. And the journals that I've created use that process to draw that out and like where are your patterns, where your programming for your characters and your masks are getting in the way versus your authentic personal or personal self.
So would you recommend this as a process for somebody that's just kind of starting out, or would you recommend it for somebody that's already done a little self-help or self-healing work and
Yeah.
is more self-aware?
Definitely the latter, Tammy, because if you are not in a place of truth, if you're being forced into doing something, you're not going to put this, the real intention behind understanding. And, it'll sound, and some people have rejected their profile because they're not in a place of truth and they don't want to see that, hey, when your emotional needs are not being met, you're going to have these weaknesses and they're going to show up and they're going to be hurtful to people. And not
Yeah.
everybody wants to look at that part of the mirror.
Yeah, and honestly, the self-reflection is the hardest part of the healing journey in general.
It
So
is.
if
It
you're
is.
not really ready, you're not going to embrace that part of it because that's the
That's
hardest
right.
part.
That's right. What I love is we start with strengths, we celebrate strengths, and then we tiptoe through the emotional awareness every day. And then I have a mindful community that we come to a Zoom just like this on Fridays, and we clear the plate before we head into the weekend. And the weekend is about celebrating what progress did you make this week in your emotional awareness journey.
So when you say clear the plate, is that another technique you're using, or is this just a group coaching kind of?
It's a bit of a process. It's a bit of a release exercise. It's setting intentions and it's reframing things because if we're going to love anybody else, we have to love ourselves first. And to love
Oh,
ourselves, sometimes we have to peel the onion layers back and actually heal through those layers of where we've been the ones bullying ourselves or beating ourselves up. And 30% of the population, as Dr. John has found, struggles with melancholy thinking. So the melancholy thinking is the largest percentage of temperaments that we see the most common. And that means that they're overthinkers. They live in their inside world, and there's the only bully that's going to be in there is you.
hmm. Explain the melancholy thinking a little bit more to people so that they get a better
So
idea. Yeah, go a little bit more into that if you could.
sure. So the melancholy is one of the five temperaments that Dr. John has identified. So the melancholy temperament, when you have that melancholy temperament, you are more introverted. You actually do a lot of inner thinking. You self motivate and self energize yourself. And when you are overwhelmed or overstimulated, you shut down yourself
Mm.
and you will withdraw and do all of those things. And so that is a wonderful, wonderful analytical type of set of characteristics, though, and huge strengths for like systems engineers and database analysts. And they're your thinkers, they're your engineers and
Mm.
your inventors. But it does also mean that we know we need to lift ourselves up and out of our, thinking zone to get into our feeling zone and balance that out more. So when we tend to overthink and overprocess, we're cycling our own stories over and over in our head.
Absolutely. And you said 30% of the population is that?
roughly based on the
Wow.
statistics.
What
Yeah.
are the, can you just, don't even have to explain them all, but what are the other four? I'm just curious. You said
So
there
the
was
other,
five.
yeah, there's five. And so Dr. John has identified, and temperament's not new, but his system of measurement is what is unique. So
Right.
the melancholy temperament, the sanguine temperament, the choleric, the phlegmatic, and the introverted sanguine. So
Okay.
if you look at my coordinates, I actually have three temperaments in one person and they show up differently. So if you've ever heard someone say, well, I'm a different person at work than I am at home, that is temperament showing up,
Yeah.
expressing itself.
Well, I was going to say it's even, you would almost have to. I would think that everybody would have a couple temperaments kind of
Most
flowing through
people
them.
do. Some people are straight compulsive melancholy, and I know individuals that are that way. Some people are straight sanguines, and that sanguines are beautiful, connected, warm, enthusiastic extroverts. They love people. They're the party people. But there are also things when, all of us, when we are not getting our emotional needs met, when we are not, really connected in ourselves, then we are going to show up as weaknesses. And that's where I tend to see, people that are more susceptible becoming victimized or someone that becomes more aggressive and might become abusive, right? Abusers are not born, they are built over time. And
Right.
that is where emotional needs going unmet for long periods of time actually turn someone into that aggressor.
Hmm. Interesting. Very interesting. So I'm going to jump off this topic a little bit more because there's something else that I really like that you say, and you talk about having the lighthouse paradox.
Yes.
I love that concept, and it's funny because when I look at it from a practitioner standpoint versus a client standpoint, and I asked somebody when after I got this and I was reading it, and I asked one of my girls, and I said, "What is it if I told you that you were like a lighthouse for people, what would you say?" And the reactions I got were really kind of interesting. And so talk about what your lighthouse paradox is, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the other reactions I got, and I want to see what you think about that.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So the lighthouse for me really came about when I started. So I have a for-profit business too. The nonprofit work is my purpose work, and the for-profit work that I do is really consulting and advisory. And I get out in the community and I meet with small business owners and entrepreneurs. I love that because I've been banking for my most of my professional career. So studying how money moves was really what created this lighthouse of like, holy cow, if you look at how people spend their money and the amount of emotions that we see in the money system around money, when money gets blocked, when it's flowing seamlessly, when it's abundant versus when it's scarce, there's a lot of emotions,
Hmm.
right? Money is an extension of ourselves. So, what I've been doing with my nonprofit work has been pointing the light on shadowy places of where money gets blocked or is exploited. And that is the mission of Inspire.World Foundation, is to talk about economic and financial systems abuse, financial anxieties in trying to change that process to where I take what I learn in the community through my consulting with my work with small businesses and I raise that up and I say through the nonprofit, we can fix our money systems. And we're working with credit unions and financial institutions and technology companies to really be that lighthouse to say, if we don't change the systems of the future, we are going to have more of the pain, the trauma, the abuse in people. Look at our mental health crisis in this country. Look at the anxiety in youth. Look at the amount of violence and trauma and abuse happening in certain low income communities. There is a connection. So
Right.
that is the lighthouse for us.
Okay. So, and that is not at all, I had no idea when I was asking people. I literally just said, if you heard you are the lighthouse, what would you think? So it had nothing to do with money. So, obviously my responses that I got from people were going to be very different, but it was really interesting as now that I hear this, that makes total sense. But it's totally different than where I thought it was going.
Yeah.
So, yeah, because I got people like they were saying, I'm a beacon for everybody and I'm shining my light, but if my light goes out, people are going to die. Like, you know what I mean? Like it was so crazy. And I was like, it is so trauma reactive that just that question. I was like, wow. Like, and it wasn't, I mean, and there was some good to it too, but it always came back to, you shined out to protect other people, but you were left vulnerable, which is
Mm,
really funny, which kind of plays into like when you talk about like your aces and things like that is a very understandable
yeah.
response to that question, but it was really funny that I got almost the same response when people really thought about it. So, but totally unrelated because yours is a financial thing. So,
Yeah, it is, but it's also a gift to humanity, right? If nobody does
right.
this work, then we're going to be on these cycles, and we have to slow down to see who's driving the bus. How do we get these systems, inherently changed? 'Cause as humans have some form of what I call an existential crisis, right? Our existence means that our light can't reach the world, that we're
Right.
all built and born with gifts and purpose to share. That's a big part of what WIDP does is it
Hmm.
lights you back up to say this is who you were born to be. This is
Right.
the strengths that you have, and something in your trauma or dysfunctional experiences change the volume of that light coming out from you. And so we technically, I believe we could all be lighthouses and that we all are.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. So, tell us if people want to work with you, see you, visit you, what is the process? The quickest. I
Um,
mean, all this is going to be in the show notes, so don't worry about that. Everything you have, all your links and everything, but the quickest way.
Yeah, thank you for that. So the work that I'm doing is getting out in the community and immersing. We are looking for unique experiences. I'm in Florida, so I can do all kinds of things remote. I would love to host different workshops for groups. We have a unique family party that we call a harmony package and a harmony journey. You can go to my website. I'm speaking out about this. I've put all the dots connected, all the way to the money systems, as I said. And I speak out at ConnieDavisSpeaks.com. And that's my personal website. And then everything is connected together to where it's fueling the mission for the nonprofit. So, but I am on a mission to help reduce the amount of financial anxiety. So I'm working on a very unique employment model for single mothers who find themselves on OnlyFans or, are trying to make extra money to make ends meet. I would love to teach this process and these experiences so that women can go and start a small business of their own with my tools and with Dr. John's work. So that is a big part of the mission I'm on. So that's really, thank you. I'm very grateful that you asked.
Yeah, no, and you are also speaking at an event that we are hosting. My
Yeah.
daughter and I are hosting in December in Cocoa. And what is your topic going to be for that?
So we are gonna, I love that it's the Radiant Wellness Women's Weekend. Radiance, I think when our light dims down, and because I do have this lighthouse branding, for me, it's about figuring out that sometimes the storm is inside of us. And the
Hmm.
storm that's raging on the inside, just very similar to my journey, and I'm sure you've had similar journeys on your healing, is when you can figure out how to clear that storm on the inside, your light naturally ripples out into the world. And then
Yep.
you're looking at a calm pond instead of a stormy sea all the time. So we're going to talk a lot about that.
Oh, good. And for the people out there listening, if you are in the Florida area, it is December 6th and 7th in Cocoa Village. So you can look on my website. You can look on Radiant Women Wellness website. They have flyers and everything to give the information for that. But I'm excited for it. I'm excited to have you speaking too.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to just immerse with the women that come out to see everyone.
Oh yeah. Where are you in Florida?
I'm in the Tampa Bay area, so I live in
Okay.
St. Pete. Yeah, so
Okay.
super
Nice.
excited to work with all kinds of women. There's so many people that need permission to let themselves heal.
They really do. They really do. So if you could give the audience, the listeners, one last words of wisdom, piece of advice, or something to take with them throughout the day to make their day a little brighter, what would it be?
Well, remember that nobody sits us down and teaches us how to be human. And that's one of Dr. John's quotes, absolutely. But trust and safety is subjective. So it's okay if you don't always feel safe or you don't always have trust. You just got to figure out what is it that you need to unlock within yourself so that you can feel the trust and the love that you absolutely want others to see that you're willing to give them.
Love it. Love it. Well, thank you so much, Connie, for coming. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Tammy, for having me. I'll see you soon.
Oh, yeah, you are welcome. If everybody else out there listening, you heard it. So trust and love, and you go looking for it. It's there, and you can trust yourself and you can love yourself. So you all have a blessed day, and we will see you back soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.